Who repaired the ship? The queen asked. Silence fell when they answered, a human. Among them floated the Aurelia, one of the most advanced ships in the Zalarian fleet, a civilization that prided itself on technology, logic, and precision. Its hull shimmered in silver and blue, reflecting the starlight. Inside, the hum of engines and the quiet chatter of the crew created a steady rhythm, as if the ship itself was alive. But that rhythm was broken. A sudden jolt shook the ship. Lights flickered. Alarms rang. The sleek, polished corridors seemed to vibrate with tension. Crew members scrambled to their stations, their alien faces etched with worry. The ship's engines, marvels of engineering beyond anything humans had ever imagined, were failing. "Engine core unstable," came a voice, calm but urgent. It belonged to Lurath, the chief Zalarian engineer, whose multiple eyes widened in panic. "We cannot stabilize the propulsion matrix. We may lose the ship." The fleet commander, a tall alien with iridescent scales, barked orders, but the usual confidence in his voice wavered. This ship had carried thousands of lives through countless missions, yet now it seemed powerless. And then a soft, human voice broke through the chaos. "I can fix it," said Elias, stepping forward. He was small by Zalarian standards, his frame thin but sturdy, dressed in a simple utility uniform. His brown hair was tousled, and his hands were already smudged with grease from previous repairs. Unlike the aliens, he carried no authority, no ceremonial insignia. But there was something about the way he spoke, calm, certain, that made heads turn. "You," Lurath hissed, "a human, you cannot even fully understand the propulsion matrix. Only our engineers." "I can," Elias interrupted politely. "I just need access to the engine room." Whispers ran through the corridors. Humans were clever, yes, but the Zalarian ships were built with alien logic, alien technology, alien rules. How could one human possibly repair a vessel designed to defy even their imagination? But the commander didn't argue. The situation was desperate, lives were at stake, and all other options had failed. "Very well," he said. "You may try, but know this: failure will cost the fleet dearly." Elias nodded, unshaken. He moved quickly, his boots echoing softly against the metallic floors. As he walked, he studied the crew around him. Many were skeptical, some were curious. A few, he noticed, were quietly hopeful. The engine room was massive, a cavern of metal and energy conduits. Lights pulsed in rhythmic patterns, and the smell of ozone and heated metal hung in the air. Sparks danced along the edges of the main propulsion core. The ship's heart was injured, and it groaned as if in pain. Elias knelt by the core, his fingers tracing the strange, alien circuits. He didn't panic. He didn't hesitate. He studied the patterns, the flows of energy, the way the engine trembled like a living thing. Humans were not the fastest, not the strongest, but they were curious. They were adaptable. They were willing to try things no one else would. "Lurath," Elias said without looking up, "these conduits are misaligned. I can reroute the energy temporarily, enough to stabilize the core, but we'll need to reinforce the primary matrix before we can resume full power." The chief engineer's many eyes widened. "Misaligned? That should be impossible. Only a human mind could see such a flaw." Elias smiled faintly. "Possibly." He moved with practiced efficiency, taking parts from a nearby storage module and improvising tools that seemed almost too simple for the situation. The alien engineers watched, silent and tense, as he worked. He replaced a damaged energy node with a carefully crafted piece of alloy, connected wires in patterns the aliens had never imagined, and adjusted the flow of power using both logic and instinct. Time seemed to stretch. Outside the engine room, the fleet waited, the hum of distant ships growing louder with anxiety. Every decision, every second counted. And then, just when it seemed the engine might fail again, the core stilled. The lights returned to a steady glow. The vibration of the ship softened. The hum of the engine became smooth, confident, alive once more. Elias leaned back slightly, wiping his hands on a cloth. "We're stable, for now." Silence filled the room. The alien engineers stared, unable to fully process what had just happened. A human, one human, had done what their best minds could not. Before anyone could speak, a voice boomed through the ship's communication system. It was Queen Zyra, the ruler of the Zalarian fleet, whose presence alone commanded awe. She had arrived unexpectedly to see the crisis for herself. "Who repaired the ship?" she demanded, her voice echoing through every corridor. The engineers hesitated. They exchanged nervous glances. Admitting the truth seemed impossible. The pride of their species, their centuries of knowledge, felt challenged by one small human. Finally, Lureth stepped forward, his voice shaking slightly. It was a human, Your Majesty." There was a long, heavy silence. The Queen's multiple eyes narrowed, studying the engine room through the communication feed. She saw Elias kneeling by the core, calm and composed. "A human?" she repeated, her voice softer now but no less commanding. "Alone." "Yes, Your Majesty," Lureth confirmed. "He stabilized the core and prevented total failure. He has unusual skills." The Queen's gaze lingered on Elias. In that moment, a strange tension filled the air. Aliens who had once looked down on humans now looked to them with curiosity, and perhaps a spark of respect. Elias, unaware of the scrutiny, continued inspecting the core. He was already thinking about the next steps, reinforcing the main matrix, checking for secondary damages, ensuring the ship could safely navigate the asteroid field ahead. His mind was alive with possibilities, and the sense of urgency sharpened every thought. Outside the engine room, whispers spread through the corridors of the Orcs. "A human repaired the ship," some said. "Is it true?" Others were more skeptical, refusing to believe it, yet even the doubters felt a subtle shift in their perception. Humans were clever, yes, but this was something else. The Queen's voice returned, calm but firm. "Bring him to me." The order rippled through the crew. Elias looked up, surprised but not afraid. He followed the command quietly, his tools still in hand, his mind already solving the next problem. The corridors of the Orcs seemed larger now, the weight of history and expectation pressing down, yet he moved without hesitation. When he reached the Queen's chamber, the doors opened, and he entered. The room was vast, lined with shimmering panels and glowing symbols. Queen Zyra sat upon a throne that seemed more like a command nexus than a seat of power. Her many eyes studied him closely, calculating, weighing, observing. "You are human," she said, her tone more statement than question. "I am," Elias replied simply. "And you repaired my ship alone?" "Yes, Your Majesty, the core was unstable. I rerouted energy flows, replaced damaged components, and stabilized the engine temporarily. Full reinforcement is required, but the ship will survive the asteroid field." The Queen leaned forward, her expression unreadable. "And you did this without fear?" "I assessed the situation, Your Majesty. Fear does not solve problems. Thought, observation, and action do." For a moment, the Queen was silent. Then she spoke, her voice softer now, tinged with curiosity. "Interesting. Humans approach the universe differently. You do not rely solely on protocol or ritual or pure logic. You adapt, you create, you see possibilities that others overlook." Elias shrugged modestly. "We try, Your Majesty, that is all." The Queen's eyes shifted to the large viewport behind her throne, showing the stars and the distant, looming asteroids. "If you succeed, your people may earn a place among us in these missions. If you fail—" She let the words hang, heavy with meaning. Elias did not flinch. Humans had always faced impossible odds, and somehow they had survived. Somehow they had thrived. He simply nodded. "I will do my best." The Queen studied him a moment longer, then finally spoke to the assembled council of alien leaders. "Prepare the fleet. We move cautiously through the asteroid field, and keep an eye on the human. I sense he may do more than any of us expect." Outside, the Orcs' engines hummed smoothly once again, a small miracle amid the vast, dangerous galaxy. And somewhere deep in the corridors, alien whispers turned to murmurs of hope, tinged with disbelief. "A human repaired the ship," one officer said quietly to another. The other shook their head. "I cannot believe it, yet it is true. Perhaps humans are not as limited as we thought." Elias, meanwhile, returned to the engine room, already working on the next phase. He was calm, focused, and determined. One small human, surrounded by stars, had begun to change the way an entire alien fleet thought about the universe. The adventure had only just begun. The Orcs glided cautiously through the asteroid field, each rock a looming threat to the ship. Outside, jagged shadows moved across the hull, the light of distant stars glinting off ice and stone. The Zalarian crew worked tirelessly, monitoring sensors, plotting safe paths, and checking for damage, but tension hung heavy in the air. The engines hummed steadily now, thanks to Elias' initial repair, but the core still needed full reinforcement to handle long-term stress. Elias returned to the engine room, surveying the hum of energy flowing through the conduits. He knelt before the core, his hands moving over alien alloys as if he could sense their weaknesses. Around him, the alien engineers watched silently, some curious, some still skeptical, and a few secretly hopeful. "What do you need?" Lureth asked, finally breaking the silence. His multiple eyes focused on Elia's, studying every movement. "You've stabilized it for now, but the main propulsion matrix, it is far beyond your understanding, human." Elias shook his head gently. "I don't need to understand it fully. I just need to understand how it works with what's here now. Sometimes you don't solve a problem by knowing everything. You solve it by trying, adjusting, and learning as you go." The alien engineers exchanged uncertain glances. That was not how Zalarian minds worked. Their entire education was based on perfect logic, strict rules, and formulas passed down through centuries. Humans worked differently. They experimented, they improvised, and somehow it often worked. Elias opened a panel and began to study the network of conduits and energy flows. He tapped lightly on a connector, then rewired a small segment, making adjustments that seemed almost random. But in his mind, each move was precise. The engine pulsed in response, and a faint glow of stability returned to the core. "See," he said simply. "A few small changes can redirect energy efficiently. It's not about brute force. It's about seeing the path the system wants to take and helping it." Lureth frowned but nodded slowly. It functions better than before, but you risk instability, one wrong move." "I know the risk," Elias replied. "I'll minimize it." As he worked, other alien engineers began to approach him, offering tools, components, and suggestions. Some were eager to help. Others were hesitant, afraid to admit that a human knew something they did not. Elias accepted help where it was useful and politely declined where it would cause confusion. His approach was simple: cooperation, not pride. Hours passed, and the human ingenuity at work became clear. He repurposed parts of the ship in ways the aliens had never imagined. A support beam became a conduit brace. Redundant circuits were rerouted to stabilize the energy flow. He even used small fragments of debris from the asteroid field, magnetically attached, as temporary stabilizers for the engine's outer casing. The alien engineers watched in awe. They had decades of training, centuries of inherited knowledge, but Elias saw solutions they had overlooked. It was not magic. It was human creativity applied with patience and courage. Outside, the ship's sensors picked up sudden movements. A cluster of fast-moving asteroids was heading toward the Orlia's path. The alarm blared. Crew members scrambled, adjusting shields and plotting evasive maneuvers. Elias glanced at the sensors, then at the engine core. "We can handle it," he said calmly, "but we need more power to the shields, and the propulsion system needs to respond faster than the manual controls allow." "How?" Lureth asked, panic creeping into his voice. "There is no time to—" "Watch," Elias said. He tapped into the ship's auxiliary systems, rerouting energy through temporary conduits he had already installed. He recalibrated the engine's response algorithm using patterns the aliens had not considered, drawing on his knowledge of efficiency and instinctive problem-solving. The ship shuddered as the engine surged. The shields brightened, shimmering with energy that flickered like liquid light. The asteroid cluster approached rapidly, but the Oralia moved with precise, almost preternatural timing, slipping between rocks as if it were alive. The alien engineers and crew gasped. Some were shouting in alarm, some in awe. The humans around Elias, few as they were, watched silently, their pride swelling. Their species, small and often underestimated, had achieved what the mighty Zalarian fleet could not. When the danger passed, the Oralia settled back into a steady glide. Elias wiped sweat from his brow and examined the core again. The minor repairs he had made were holding. The ship was not only surviving, it was thriving. Word of his ingenuity spread quickly through the fleet. The Queen herself was informed, and she called a private audience with Elias, curious about the human who had done the impossible. "You are unlike any human I have studied," she said. Her eyes studied him, sharp and calculating. "You do not fear failure, yet you take risks others would avoid. You do not rely on established rules, yet your results are remarkable." "I do what is necessary," Elias replied simply. "Fear does not solve problems, only action does." The Queen nodded slowly. "And yet action alone is not enough. It is your mind, human, that is extraordinary. You see possibilities where others see obstacles." Elias shrugged modestly. "Perhaps, Or perhaps humans have always had to find ways to survive with less. We learn to adapt, to create, and to try solutions that are unconventional. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but we always try. The Queen's expression softened. Interesting, perhaps we have underestimated your species. You may have a role to play in the future of this fleet, if you survive. Elias nodded, understanding the weight of her words. Survival was never guaranteed. But he had learned something in his years among humans. Even in impossible situations, ingenuity, patience, and courage could turn the tide. Meanwhile, back in the engine room, the alien engineers were beginning to take notes. They watched Elias' every move, trying to understand his methods. Some were resentful, pride wounded by the success of a human. Some were fascinated, inspired by his approach. And a few quietly began to mimic his techniques, secretly hoping to learn from him without admitting it aloud. As the hours passed, Elias made steady progress. He reinforced the main propulsion matrix using a combination of human intuition and careful observation of the alien systems. The energy flows became smoother, more efficient. Redundant safety systems were implemented in real time. By the end of the day, the Orlia's engines were fully stabilized, ready for long-term travel through even the most dangerous regions of space. The ship itself seemed to hum in approval, as if recognizing the ingenuity that had saved it. The crew felt a renewed sense of hope. Where once fear and uncertainty had ruled, now there was confidence. They had seen what humans could do, and they would never see them in the same way again. Late that evening, Elias paused and looked out at the stars. The vast asteroid field lay behind, the danger momentarily averted. But he knew the galaxy was full of challenges yet to come. And he knew one thing more. Humans, though small in number and underestimated, could make a difference that even the greatest fleets could not ignore. A knock came at the engine room door. Lurath stepped in, a mixture of respect and curiosity in his eyes. "Human, your methods, they are unorthodox, but effective. I do not understand it fully, yet I cannot deny the results." Elias smiled faintly. "Sometimes the path is not obvious at first. You look for rules. Humans look for possibilities." Lurath nodded slowly. "I see that now." He hesitated, then added quietly, "The Queen, she will want to speak with you again. Your work is unprecedented." Elias simply nodded. Words were unnecessary. His work spoke louder than any speech could. As he continued inspecting the engine, the sense of quiet triumph settled over the room. Humans had shown that courage, creativity, and intelligence could overcome even the most complex problems. And in doing so, they had earned the attention, and perhaps the respect, of an entire alien fleet. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, indifferent to the struggles and triumphs of a single ship. Yet within the Orlia, a new story was being written. A story of ingenuity, courage, and the quiet power of a species often underestimated, humanity. And somewhere deep in the corridors of the fleet, the whispers began. A human repaired the ship alone. It was not just a statement of fact. It was the beginning of a new understanding, a new respect, a new chapter. The adventure was far from over. But for now, humanity had shown its worth. The Aurelia glided through the asteroid field with steady precision, its engines humming with newfound confidence. Sensors scanned the surrounding void, tracking hundreds of tumbling rocks, each one a potential death sentence. The Zalarian crew moved like clockwork, following protocols drilled into them for centuries. But despite their experience, the tension was palpable. No one had faced a challenge quite like this before. A human had repaired the ship, yes, but the fleet was still vulnerable. Elias moved through the engine room, checking energy flows and structural integrity. The propulsion matrix held steady, but the human mind never rested. He knew the asteroid field was only the first test. The ship was stable, but stability was not safety. Safety was never guaranteed. A sudden alarm cut through the quiet hum of the Aurelia's systems. The control panels flashed red. A fast-moving asteroid cluster was approaching, far larger and more unpredictable than any sensors had initially detected. Crew members froze for a heartbeat before rushing to their stations. "Brace for impact," barked the fleet commander, his voice tense but controlled. "All hands follow evasive protocols. Shields at maximum." The Aurelia shuddered as the first rock struck its outer hull. The impact sent tremors through the ship, shaking loose panels and throwing tools from workstations. The alien engineers scrambled to compensate, but the standard protocols were failing. The shields flickered under the strain, energy levels fluctuating dangerously. Elias stepped forward calmly, surveying the situation. The aliens around him were panicked, their precise calculations useless against the unpredictable motion of the asteroids. He didn't hesitate. We need to reroute power to the shields and adjust the propulsion timing. The ship must anticipate the rocks, not just react to them. Lureth stared. We cannot do that. Our systems are locked to manual response. How will you? I'll show you, Elias said. His hands flew across the panels, connecting circuits and opening temporary control pathways. He recalibrated the engine's output to synchronize with the shields, creating a feedback loop that allowed the ship to respond automatically to incoming obstacles. The crew watched in disbelief as the Orlaia began moving almost like a living thing. It twisted, banked, and dodged with a precision no human or alien pilot could achieve manually. Rocks that should have smashed the hull were deflected, slipping past harmlessly as the engines compensated instantly. Impossible, one engineer whispered. No system can respond that fast. Elias didn't answer. He continued working, his mind calculating the trajectories of hundreds of rocks at once, adjusting energy flows in real time. He was not afraid. Fear slowed humans down, he knew. Focus and observation accelerated them. The asteroid storm intensified. A massive fragment larger than a small building hurtled toward the Orlaia. The crew froze again, panic rising. Shields at full power were still not enough to stop it if it hit directly. Elias didn't flinch. He analyzed the path, then tapped into the auxiliary thrusters he had installed earlier during the first repairs. With a quick recalibration, he redistributed power, forcing the ship to rise sharply and tilt in a new direction. The asteroid passed harmlessly beneath them, missing the hull by mere meters. The engineers gasped, some cheering quietly, others in stunned silence. The fleet commander's eyes widened. He had never seen a ship maneuver like this before. A human controlling the engines directly, he muttered, but the danger was not over. The asteroid storm was vast and more rocks were incoming. The sensors warned of a chain reaction. One cluster could push another, creating a cascade that could trap the Orlaia in a deadly corridor. Elias' brow furrowed. He needed more power, more control, and more precision. He turned to the alien engineers, giving quick, clear instructions. Open the secondary conduits. Divert reserve power to the aft thrusters. Monitor energy flow and report any fluctuation immediately. The aliens hesitated. They were used to rigid hierarchies, and following a human's orders felt unnatural. But they trusted him. Somehow they knew he understood what they could not. Slowly they complied. The Orlaia twisted and turned with astonishing agility. Rocks bounced off shields, scraping the hull but leaving it intact. Elias moved through the engine room like a conductor, orchestrating power, momentum, and shields into perfect harmony. Outside, the Queen observed from the command deck. Her many eyes were wide, her expression unreadable. She had expected cleverness, ingenuity, but this was beyond even her high expectations. A human, small and fragile by Zalarian standards, was commanding a ship through a storm that could have destroyed it. Remarkable, she whispered. Suddenly, a loud crack reverberated through the ship. One of the main shield generators had been hit. Energy spiked dangerously, threatening to overload. Alarms blared, red lights flashing. "Generator hit," shouted a crew member. "We're losing shield integrity?" Elias did not panic. He ran to the generator console, analyzing the damage. The generator was damaged, yes, but it could be rerouted using auxiliary systems. He connected temporary conduits, creating a makeshift backup path. Sparks flew as energy surged through the improvised circuits, but the generator stabilized. The crew stared in awe. No one had attempted such a repair in the middle of a live storm before. It was reckless, yes, but it worked. More asteroids approached. The ship swerved, twisted, and dodged. Elias' mind moved faster than anyone else's, predicting trajectories and adjusting power flows instinctively. He was everywhere at once, yet calm, focused, and precise. After what felt like hours, but was only minutes, the storm began to subside. The largest clusters had passed, the remaining rocks scattered harmlessly. The Orlaia's shields held, the engines hummed smoothly, and the ship glided back into calmer space. The alien engineers exhaled in relief. Some collapsed in their stations, exhausted from the intensity of the storm. Some whispered to each other, unable to fully comprehend what had just happened. Lurath approached Elias, bowing slightly. Human, you have done what we thought impossible. You saved the ship. Elias shook his head. We saved the ship. I only guided it. The crew, the engines, the shields, they all work together. Humans alone cannot survive in space. We need cooperation. Word of Elias' actions reached the Queen immediately. She summoned him to the command deck. When he arrived, she was waiting, her many eyes fixed on him. You did not just repair the ship, she said, her voice calm but full of weight. You controlled it through a storm that could have destroyed the entire fleet. You acted decisively, without fear, and your solutions were unprecedented. Elias nodded. The storm was dangerous, Your Majesty, but danger is not reason to hesitate. Observation, calculation, and action, those are the tools that saved us. The Queen studied him silently, her expression softening. Humans approach challenges differently. You are not bound by protocol alone. You improvise, adapt, and act. Perhaps that is why your species survives where others might fail. Elias looked out the viewport at the stars. The storm was behind them, but new challenges awaited in the uncharted depths of space. We survive because we try, and we keep trying no matter the odds. The Queen's gaze lingered. Perhaps humans will have a role in shaping the future of this fleet, if your species proves capable of such courage consistently. The Orlia's crew began inspecting the ship for minor damage, their movements now filled with confidence rather than fear. The ship had survived. Lives had been saved, and a human had proven that ingenuity and courage could match the mightiest of alien technologies. Later in the engine room, Elias examined the main propulsion matrix. Damage was minimal after the storm, thanks to the emergency measures he had implemented. He smiled faintly. Challenges like these were why humans thrived. They pushed the boundaries of what was possible, seeing solutions where others saw only danger. Lurath approached again, more respectfully this time. I admit I doubted your methods, but I see now. Humans, they see the universe in a way that even the greatest of us cannot. You have earned my respect. Elias nodded quietly. Respect is earned through action, not words, and there is still more work to do. The fleet must continue its journey safely. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, indifferent to the struggles and triumphs of a single ship. But within the Oralia, a quiet revolution had begun. Humans were no longer seen as fragile or limited. They were capable, creative, and courageous. And those who witnessed Elias' actions would never forget it. Somewhere deep in the corridors, whispers echoed among the crew, "A human saved us through the storm alone." And somewhere else among the fleet's leadership, one voice spoke softly but firmly. "We must pay attention to humans. They may change everything." Elias, meanwhile, returned to the engines, already planning the next steps. The storm had passed, but the galaxy was vast and full of unknown dangers. And he knew one truth. Humans, though small in number, could make a difference larger than anyone expected. The adventure had only just begun. The Oralia floated peacefully in open space, leaving the asteroid storm behind. The stars stretched endlessly in every direction, silent witnesses to the trials that had just passed. Within the ship, the atmosphere was a mixture of relief, pride, and quiet awe. Crew members moved more confidently, speaking in low tones about what had just occurred. Humans had proven themselves in ways the fleet had never expected. Elias moved through the corridors, inspecting minor damages left by the asteroid storm. Panels had been scratched, some conduits needed adjustment, but the ship was intact. Every step he took was purposeful, calm, and unhurried. The human mind thrived in such moments of quiet after chaos. While aliens relied on rigid protocols and calculations, humans improvised, adapted, and corrected as they went. It was not a matter of arrogance. It was instinct, honed through necessity. In the command deck, a council of Xylarian leaders convened. The Queen sat at the center, her gaze sharp yet thoughtful. Around her, high-ranking officers and engineers debated in low tones. Whispers about the humans' achievements had already spread throughout the fleet. Some were awed, others wary, and a few openly resentful. "Your Majesty," said a senior officer, his voice tight with controlled frustration, "we cannot ignore what has happened." This human repaired the Oralia and guided it through the storm, alone, without full knowledge of our systems. "Yes," added another engineer, his scales glinting faintly under the soft light. "It is unprecedented. The systems responded in ways we have never achieved before." The humans' methods are effective, though unorthodox. The queen's many eyes narrowed. She had expected intelligence, yes, but this was different. And yet, she said slowly, you hesitate to fully acknowledge it. Is your doubt born of reason or pride? There was silence. Pride ran deep among the Zalarian engineers. Their civilization had thrived for millennia on logic, rules, and mastery of technology. To admit that a human had outperformed them, even partially, was humbling in ways they were not accustomed to facing. Finally, the queen spoke again. Bring him to me. The order traveled quickly through the ship. Crew members moved aside respectfully as Elias approached the command deck. He entered calmly, carrying no weapons, no insignia, only his tools and the quiet confidence of someone who had faced impossible odds and survived. You have done more than repair a ship, the queen said, her voice echoing softly through the chamber. You have proven that your species approaches problems differently than ours. You think not in formulas but in possibilities. You act not by fear but by understanding. Elias inclined his head slightly. We try to survive, Your Majesty. We adapt, that is all. And we always try to find solutions, even when they seem impossible. The queen's gaze lingered on him. Interesting. Perhaps it is time we reconsider our assumptions about humanity. You may have a place in our fleet if your kind continues to show this courage and ingenuity. Murmurs ran through the council. Some officers exchanged uneasy glances. To officially recognize a human was unprecedented. It would challenge tradition and provoke debate. But the queen's word carried authority, and no one dared contradict her openly. Meanwhile, the Orlia's crew went about their work, repairing minor damage and adjusting systems after the storm. Aliens who had once doubted humans now watched Elias with quiet respect. He moved among them with patience and clarity, explaining adjustments, guiding repairs, and offering solutions. Even Lurath, the chief engineer, had begun to understand the human approach. Your methods, they are unlike anything I have seen, he said softly. Yet they work. They always work, Elias smiled faintly. Sometimes the obvious solution is hidden. We try different ways until one works, that is all. The queen called for a formal assembly. The Orlia's main chamber filled with officers, engineers, and crew members from multiple ships in the fleet. The air was tense, filled with curiosity and anticipation. When Elias stepped forward, silence fell. Whispers spread like wildfire. The human! He saved the ship. The queen rose from her throne. Today we witnessed an extraordinary event, she said, her voice carrying across the chamber. A human, small and underestimated by many, has proven that ingenuity and courage can surpass even the greatest of our expectations. This human, Elias, has repaired the Oralia and guided it through a storm that could have destroyed our fleet. The crowd murmured. Some were amazed, others skeptical, but all could not ignore the truth. The queen's gaze swept across the room. Let this be known, humans are not weak. They are not incapable. They think differently, act boldly, and survive where others might fail. From this day forward, they shall be recognized as capable members of our fleet. Silence followed. The weight of her words settled on every listener. Pride, disbelief, admiration, these emotions mingled, creating a tension that was almost tangible. Finally, an older engineer stepped forward, his voice quivering slightly. Your Majesty, it is unprecedented. But the human's actions have saved lives. Perhaps we should study his methods, integrate them into our protocols. The queen nodded. Yes, we must learn. Humans bring a perspective we have not seen before. Their methods may teach us much about problem-solving, adaptability, and creativity. Elias remained modest, quietly observing the reactions of the aliens around him. He had no desire for fame or accolades. What mattered was survival, understanding, and action. Recognition was irrelevant, results spoke for themselves, yet even as respect grew, so did tension. Some officers whispered privately, their pride wounded. A human guiding the fleet, one muttered. What will this mean for our traditions? Others were inspired. If humans can do this, perhaps they can contribute to missions beyond our expectations. We should include them, study them, learn from them. The queen, sensing the division, raised her hand. There will be no dissent on this matter. Observation is not surrender. Learning is not weakness. We will integrate humans into missions carefully, but their value is clear. Do not forget it. Elias was then asked to demonstrate his methods to the assembly. He guided them through the minor adjustments he had made to the Orlia's systems, explaining in simple, logical steps. Alien engineers listened, sometimes puzzled, sometimes amazed. His improvisation, patience, and ability to adapt in real time left a lasting impression. Even Lurath admitted quietly to himself, this human sees the systems not as rigid structures but as tools to be understood, molded, and guided. Incredible. Later, in a private audience, the Queen asked Elias about the human species. Tell me, why are humans capable of such ingenuity? Why do they survive when logic alone would fail them? Elias thought for a moment. Humans survive because we must. We are not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most numerous. But we face challenges every day and we adapt. We try solutions others would not even consider. Sometimes we fail, but we try again and we keep learning. That is how we survive and that is how we thrive. The Queen's eyes softened. Perhaps that is what we have underestimated. You are small yet powerful in ways we cannot measure. Elias nodded. We do what is necessary, that is all. The Orcs now moved with a new sense of purpose. The storm was behind them, but the journey ahead was filled with unknown dangers and possibilities. Aliens and humans alike prepared for what lay ahead, united not only by survival, but also by the recognition of human ingenuity. Word of Elias' achievements spread quickly through the fleet. Humans were no longer a curiosity or a minor addition. They were now seen as contributors, problem solvers, and innovators. For centuries, the Zalarian fleet had relied on precision, rules, and authority. Now, a new approach had entered their understanding of what was possible. In the engine room, Elias continued his work. Repairs were minor now, but he monitored the systems carefully. He encouraged the alien engineers to learn from his methods, to think creatively, and to embrace adaptation. Some resisted, but many observed closely, realizing the truth. Humans had skills that complemented the fleet's technology and traditions. As the day ended, the Queen addressed the fleet once more. Let today be remembered. Let the actions of one human remind us that courage, ingenuity, and adaptability are as important as rules and calculations. We have much to learn from them, and they have much to contribute to our journey through the stars. The council adjourned, officers left to their duties, and the Orcs glided silently through the void. Outside, the stars were endless and cold, but within the ship, a new warmth spread, a warmth of understanding, respect, and possibility. Elias walked the corridors, quietly observing the fleet. He felt no pride, only focus. Challenges were not over. The galaxy was vast, full of dangers and mysteries. But humans had begun to earn their place among the stars, and this was only the beginning. Whispers echoed among the crew. A human saved the ship and earned the fleet's respect. And somewhere deep in the Queen's chamber, she smiled faintly, recognizing a truth she had only begun to understand. Humans were different, not weaker, not inferior. They were capable. And capable humans could change everything. The Orcs sailed through the calm darkness of open space, but the peace was fragile. Beyond the ship's sensors lay uncharted territories, regions of the galaxy marked by sudden gravitational anomalies, rogue asteroid fields, and unpredictable energy storms. The fleet had survived the first trial, but Elias knew more challenges awaited. The galaxy did not wait for preparation. It demanded courage, adaptability, and intelligence. The Queen had ordered the fleet to proceed cautiously, giving the Orcs the lead. Her decision was both strategic and symbolic. A human now held the respect of the fleet, and the Queen wanted to observe firsthand how this species approached leadership under pressure. Elias moved quietly through the engine room, checking systems, recalibrating sensors, and adjusting minor repairs. The alien engineers, who had once doubted him, now worked closely at his side. Some still whispered about his methods, amazed at how a human could understand and manipulate their complex systems with ease. Others studied his every move, eager to learn, realizing that what humans lacked in raw strength, they made up for in creativity and adaptability. A sudden alert interrupted the calm. The fleet's sensors had detected a dense asteroid cluster, much larger and more dangerous than any before. The Orcs' path cut directly through it. Panic flickered briefly among the alien crew, but Elias remained composed. "This is similar to before," he said. "We can navigate it if we act fast, shields at maximum, engines to full responsiveness, and we must move as one, not just follow protocols." Lurath frowned. "Once again, human, you suggest improvisation?" "Yes," Elias replied calmly. "Logic alone will not save us. Observation, anticipation, and action will." The fleet commander hesitated but nodded. Follow his instructions. We have no other choice. Elias took control of the Orlaya's navigation system, rerouting energy, adjusting propulsion, and integrating shield power into a dynamic, responsive system. The ship moved with a grace that seemed almost impossible, twisting, sliding, and accelerating at precise angles as massive asteroids tumbled past. The crew watched in awe. Each maneuver required split-second calculations and instinctive adjustments. Humans had always thrived under pressure, and Elias' calm, clear mind guided the ship through the deadly field. Suddenly, an enormous rock, larger than a small outpost, hurtled toward the Orlaia. Shields alone could not withstand the impact. Crew members gasped in terror. Elias did not flinch. He accessed the auxiliary thrusters and redistributed energy in a bold, unconventional move. The ship tilted, rose sharply, and accelerated just in time. The asteroid missed by mere meters, and the Orlaia continued on its path, engines humming smoothly. The alien engineers could hardly believe it. "It cannot be, the human predicted it," one whispered. Elias smiled faintly, though his mind remained focused. Prediction was not magic, it was observation, adaptation, and the willingness to act decisively under pressure. Humans had mastered survival not through strength, but through ingenuity. The fleet watched as the Orlaia led them safely through the asteroid cluster. Smaller ships followed the path Elias had carved, learning in real time how humans approached problems. By the time the last ship emerged, the fleet was intact. Not a single life was lost, and no ship had suffered critical damage. The chamber where the Queen observed was filled with quiet awe. Her many eyes studied Elias as he coordinated repairs and guided the fleet. "Remarkable," she whispered. "This human has changed everything I thought I knew about courage and capability." She called Elias to her observation deck after the maneuver. "You have proven yourself beyond repair, beyond improvisation, beyond even skill," she said. "You have shown courage, wisdom, and calm under pressure. Humans are not just survivors, they are innovators, leaders, creators." Elias bowed slightly. "We do what is necessary, Your Majesty, that is all." "Perhaps it is time, then," the Queen said, "that humans be officially recognized as equal partners in this fleet. Not assistants, not curiosities, partners. Your actions today demand it." Word of the fleet's survival and Elias' role spread quickly. Aliens who had doubted humans were forced to reevaluate their assumptions. Some grudgingly admitted respect, others were inspired. The human species, long underestimated, had earned a place among the stars, not by brute force, but by intelligence, courage, and adaptability. In the days that followed, the fleet navigated through challenging regions of space, facing magnetic storms, drifting debris, and unexpected gravitational anomalies. Each time, Elias guided the ship with calm precision, using creativity to solve problems that alien protocols could not anticipate. The fleet learned from him, adopting some of his methods, while still relying on their centuries of technology and tradition. The Queen convened a formal assembly to honor Elias and acknowledge humanity's contributions. The chamber filled with officers, engineers, and crew from across the fleet. When Elias entered, silence fell. Whispers of admiration and disbelief rippled through the crowd. "Who repaired the Orlaia?" the Queen asked, her voice clear and commanding. The room was quiet. Then one by one, voices rose. "A human!" The words echoed across the chamber. Shock and awe filled the room. Humans, so often underestimated, had now proven themselves capable of incredible feats. The Queen nodded. "Indeed, a human repaired the ship. A human guided the fleet through dangers that even our greatest minds could not anticipate. Let it be known, humans are worthy allies, innovators, and members of our fleet. Their ingenuity is an asset that cannot be ignored." Elias remained modest. He said nothing, allowing the recognition to speak for itself. His reward was not titles or honors, but the knowledge that humans had earned respect through action, courage, and intelligence. In the engine room, Lureth finally admitted aloud, "Humans, they see things differently. They act boldly, they adapt, and they survive." I respect that." Elias nodded quietly. "That is how we thrive. Observation, creativity, and courage, those are our tools." The fleet moved forward, exploring new regions of space, each challenge met with collaboration between humans and aliens. The once unimaginable idea of humans as equal contributors became reality. They were no longer merely guests or observers. They were essential members of a fleet capable of navigating the unknown. Outside the Oralia, stars stretched endlessly, silent witnesses to the courage and ingenuity of a small human among a vast fleet. In the quiet of space, one truth became clear. Humanity's strength was not in sheer power or size, but in the mind, heart, and will to act where others hesitated. Back on the observation deck, the Queen looked at Elias once more. "Your people are remarkable. Perhaps one day humans will not only survive among the stars, they will shape them." Elias glanced at the stars and then at the fleet moving confidently through the galaxy. "We will try, Your Majesty. That is all we can do." The Queen smiled faintly. "Try, yes, but humans succeed where others fail, and now the galaxy will see it." And so the Oralia and the fleet continued their journey. Humans had earned their place among the stars, not by weapons or numbers, but through ingenuity, courage, and adaptability. Where once doubt had reigned, now respect and trust guided the path ahead. A human had repaired the ship. A human had guided the fleet through peril. And a human had proven that even the smallest and most underestimated could change the course of history. Somewhere deep within the corridors, whispers echoed. "A human saved us, a human led us, a human earned our respect." And the Queen, observing the stars, knew it was only the beginning. For humans, the galaxy was vast and full of challenges, but also full of possibilities. And with ingenuity, courage, and determination, humanity would continue to rise. The stars stretched endlessly, but for the first time, the humans among them were not just passengers. They were pioneers, and pioneers always leave a mark.